I used to think the dark web was mostly a scary word people threw around online. I knew the basics. Don't click random links. Don't download anything. Don't talk to strangers. It was the same stuff everybody says in comment sections. I wasn't looking for anything illegal. I was just bored, curious, and in that phase where watching disturbing internet mystery videos made me feel like I understood parts of the world most people ignored. This happened when I was 22 and living in a small apartment with my older cousin Marcus. He worked nights at a warehouse, so most evenings I had the place to myself. I had a cheap desk from Walmart, a laptop that sounded like it was struggling for air, and way too much free time. One night, I was watching a video about abandoned websites and internet rabbit holes. The guy in the video kept talking about hidden forums and dead marketplaces like they were haunted houses. I knew half of it was probably exaggerated, but curiosity got me. I downloaded the browser everybody talks about. I'm not going to explain anything beyond that because honestly, I wish I never did it. I searched around for basic directories, clicked through a few boring pages, and was surprised by how cheap and ugly most of it looked. It wasn't like movies. No red skulls, no dramatic loading screens. Just slow pages, broken links, bad grammar, and forums that looked like they hadn't been updated since 2006. After about an hour, I was disappointed. Most of what I found was scams, weird political rants, and people selling things I wanted nothing to do with. I was about to close everything when I found a page that looked different from the rest. It was plain white with black text, no images, no logo. At the top it said, Local Mirrors. Under it was a list of city names. That was what caught my attention. One of them was my city. Not a huge city either, not New York or Chicago. Just my regular, boring city where the most interesting thing was a new Chick-fil-A opening near the interstate. I clicked it. The next page loaded slowly. It had a search bar, a few dates, and a list of usernames. At first, I thought it was some kind of local gossip board or dead message forum. The posts were short, stuff like, Blue Honda still parked near laundromat. Back porch light out again. Dog left outside from 11:40 to 12:10. I froze when I read that one. It wasn't violent. It wasn't graphic. That almost made it worse. It sounded like boring notes someone would write if they were watching a neighborhood. I clicked through more posts, and the details got more specific. Street names, apartment complexes, gas stations, cars, work schedules. One post mentioned a woman at the pharmacy on James Avenue who always leaves through the side exit after closing. Another mentioned a man who took the same bus every morning and wore headphones. A different thread was just titled with an address. I should have closed it right there. Instead, I searched my apartment complex name. Nothing came up. I felt stupid for being relieved. Then I searched the street name. One result. My stomach dropped before I even clicked it. The post was from 2 weeks earlier. It said, second floor unit, male early 20s, usually alone after 9. Roommate leaves around 8:35 in black pickup. Bedroom window faces parking lot. Keeps blinds uneven. I stopped breathing for a second. My blinds were uneven. Not wide open or anything, just one side slightly lower because the cord had gotten stuck months before. I always noticed it, but never fixed it because it didn't seem important. I pushed my chair back so fast it hit the wall. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator. I stared across the room at my bedroom window. The blinds were closed, but the left side hung lower than the right, exactly like the post said. I went over and fixed them with shaking hands. Then I came back to the laptop and kept reading because fear makes you do dumb things. There were 3 comments under the post. The first said, "Pattern confirmed." The second said, "No camera visible." The third said, "Ask if he still uses the old email." That one confused me. Old email. I had an old email account from high school. I barely used it anymore except for junk accounts and old logins. I opened a regular browser and checked it. There was one unread message in the spam folder from 4 days earlier. The subject line was, "Still curious?" The sender was a random string of letters and numbers. I clicked it, which was another stupid thing. The email body was only 1 sentence. "You look more nervous in person." I slammed the laptop shut. For a few minutes, I just stood in the middle of the living room. I wanted to call Marcus, but I didn't know what I would say. "Hey, I went somewhere sketchy online and found a page where strangers are watching our apartment." Didn't sound real. It sounded like I had stayed up too late. So I did what most people do when they are scared but trying to stay rational. I checked the locks. Front door locked. Sliding balcony door locked. Windows locked. Then I turned off the living room light. As soon as the room went dark, I realized how clearly I could see the parking lot through the small gap at the side of the blinds, and how clearly someone outside could see me. I moved along the wall and looked out. At first I saw the usual cars. Marcus's spot was empty. The old minivan by the dumpster was there. A silver sedan was parked under the broken light near Building C. Then I noticed a man standing near the mailboxes. He wasn't doing anything dramatic. He wasn't staring up with his face fully visible like some horror movie. He was just standing there with his phone in his hand, angled slightly upward, toward my building. I backed away from the window. My whole body went cold. I told myself it could be anyone. Maybe he was waiting for somebody. Maybe he lived here. Maybe the phone wasn't pointed at me. Then my laptop made a sound, a notification. I hadn't closed anything. The page was still open. I lifted the screen a few inches. A new comment had appeared under the post about me. "Light off now." I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I owned, and locked myself in my bedroom. I pushed my dresser in front of the door, which was pointless because it opened inward, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I called Marcus. He answered on the 3rd ring, annoyed because the warehouse was loud. I told him to come home. I tried to explain it, but my voice kept breaking. He stopped joking once he realized I was serious. "Call the police," he said. So I did. The dispatcher stayed calm, which made me feel a little less insane. I told her someone might be watching my apartment. I left out the dark web part at first because I was embarrassed. Then she asked why I believed that, and I told her everything. 2 officers came about 12 minutes later. By then, the man by the mailboxes was gone. 1 officer stayed with me while the other checked the parking lot. I showed them the page on my laptop, but it had stopped loading. Every link gave an error. The local page was gone. The post was gone. Everything was gone. The officer looked at me like he was trying very hard to be polite. I still had the spam email, though. That changed his face a little. He took a picture of it with his phone and wrote down the address. He asked if I had enemies, if I owed money, if I had been arguing with anyone online. I said no to all of it. They looked around outside and found nothing, no person, no camera, no broken locks. Before leaving, one officer told me to keep the blinds closed, change my passwords, and stay somewhere else for the night if I could. Marcus got home right after they left. He was mad at me at first for going on those sites, but after I showed him the email, he stopped talking. We stayed at his girlfriend's place that night. The next morning, we came back to grab clothes and check things in daylight. Everything looked normal until Marcus noticed something near the balcony. A cigarette butt. Neither of us smoked. It was sitting on the little strip of outdoor carpet right outside the sliding door. Our balcony was on the second floor. The only way to get there was through our apartment or by climbing from the stairwell railing and pulling yourself over. Marcus took a picture. Then he looked at me and said, "We're moving." We didn't move right away because normal life is expensive and leases don't care if you're terrified, but we started sleeping with the living room lights on. Marcus changed his work schedule for a while. I taped black trash bags over my bedroom window until we bought thicker curtains. I never went back to those sites. About 3 weeks later, I got another email in that old account. Same kind of random sender. No subject. The message said, "Apartment was easier." That was it. I showed Marcus, and we broke the lease 2 days later. We lost our deposit and had to stay with family for a month, but I didn't care. The police never found anything. At least, nobody ever told me if they did. I deleted the old email account, wiped my laptop, and changed every password I had. For a while, I convinced myself it was over. Then last year, I ran into my old downstairs neighbor at a grocery store. We recognized each other near the frozen food aisle and did that awkward small talk thing. I asked if she still lived at the complex, and she said no. She moved after that weird stuff with the windows. I tried to stay calm and asked what she meant. She told me someone had been leaving small marks on certain apartment doors. Tiny dots in black marker, low near the frame where most people wouldn't notice. She said management sent out an email saying it was probably kids. Then she looked at me and said, "Yours had too." I still don't know what that meant. I don't want to know. I only went on there because my coworker kept talking about it like it was some haunted house attraction. He worked IT with me at a small medical billing company, and he was the type of guy who loved acting like he knew things nobody else did. One slow Friday, while we were waiting on a server update, he started telling me about dark web markets, drugs, fake IDs, hacked accounts, all the usual stuff you hear about online. I told him most of it sounded like scams. He said, "Some of it is. Some of it really isn't." That stuck with me. I'm not proud of this, but curiosity got me. That night, after my girlfriend went to bed, I sat at my desk with the lights off except for the monitor. I wasn't planning to buy anything. I didn't even have crypto. I just wanted to look around and prove to myself it was exaggerated. At first, it was almost boring. The pages loaded slow. Half the links were dead. A lot of the listings looked like obvious traps or fake storefronts made by people trying too hard to sound dangerous. There were stolen streaming accounts, fake passports, pills with blurry pictures, counterfeit money, and strange services written in broken English. I clicked through a few pages, mostly feeling stupid for even being there. Then I found a category labeled medical specimens. That sounded gross, but not impossible. People collect weird things. Old dental molds, bones from medical schools, preserved animals in jars. I figured it was going to be stuff like that. The first few listings were exactly what I expected. Animal skulls, antique surgical tools, a jar with something cloudy inside that looked like it had been sitting in a basement since the 70s. Then I saw a listing with a title that made my stomach drop. Fresh human scalp section, dark hair, preserved. There was a thumbnail beside it. I didn't click right away. I just sat there staring at the words, hoping I had read them wrong. The picture was small, but I could see hair. Real hair. It was matted and black, spread over pale skin on a metal tray. The title looked too plain, no dramatic wording, no creepy jokes, just a description like someone selling a phone charger. I should have closed everything then. Instead, I clicked. The listing opened into a page with 3 pictures. I won't describe them too much, because even thinking about them now makes me feel sick, but they looked real in the worst way. Not movie prop real, not Halloween store real. Real like something from a hospital room that nobody was supposed to photograph. There was a description underneath. It claimed the item came from unclaimed remains. It listed the approximate size, hair color, preservation method, and shipping region. The seller had other listings too. That was what bothered me most. It wasn't one shocking post from some edgy creep. It was organized. There were prices. There were reviews. I clicked the seller profile, and that page is what made it go from disgusting to terrifying. There were listings for pieces of skin with tattoos still on them. One had a faded rose tattoo. Another had part of a name in blue ink. There were teeth sold in lots, human ears, a section of jawbone, a cloudy preserved eye labeled by color. I remember one listing for a small rib segment photographed beside a ruler. No fingers. I remember noticing that because I had braced myself for it, but there were none. Somehow that made it feel less like a horror cliche and more like a real operation. The reviews were short. Arrived sealed. Looks fresh. Good preservation. One review said, "Tattoo was exactly as pictured." That sentence has stayed in my head ever since. I leaned back from my desk and realized I was sweating. My apartment was quiet. The air conditioner had kicked off. I could hear my girlfriend breathing in the bedroom down the hall, completely asleep while I sat there looking at what looked like pieces of dead people being raided like used electronics. I told myself it was fake. That became my only way to keep looking. I kept repeating it in my head. Fake, props, animal parts, AI images. Something staged. Then I saw the listing that made me close the laptop. It was for a tattooed piece of skin, roughly rectangular, preserved flat. The tattoo was a little cartoon sun with initials underneath it. The seller had blurred part of the image, but not enough. I knew that tattoo, not personally, not from someone I loved, but I had seen it recently. A few weeks earlier, a woman from our town had gone missing. Her name was Erin. She was 29, worked at a salon, and her missing poster had been shared all over Facebook. People posted photos of her smiling with friends, standing on the beach, holding a dog. In one picture, she had her arm around someone, and on the inside of her upper arm was that same little sun tattoo with initials under it. I froze so hard my hand went numb on the mouse. I opened Facebook on my phone with my other hand and searched her name. Her missing poster came up fast. Same face. Same town. Last seen leaving a gas station after work. I scrolled through her public photos until I found the one I remembered. The tattoo matched. Not almost. Not similar. Matched. The initials under the sun were her younger sibling's initials. Someone had written that in the comments after people asked about it. I looked back at the laptop screen. The listing had been posted 2 days earlier. My first thought was to report it, but I didn't even know how. I didn't know what link I was on anymore, what country it was hosted in, whether taking screenshots would get me in trouble, whether I had already crossed some line just by being there. My second thought was worse. The seller's profile showed recent activity. They were online. I slammed the laptop shut like they could see me through it. For a few minutes, I just sat there in the dark. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it. I kept picturing Erin's missing poster next to that listing and the casual way the seller described it. Preserved. Tattoo visible. Ships discreetly. I finally woke my girlfriend up. She was annoyed at first because it was almost 2 a.m., but then she saw my face and sat up. I told her what I found. I expected her to say I was being paranoid or that it was probably fake. She didn't. She told me to call the police. That was the most embarrassing and terrifying call I've ever made. I had to explain that I had been browsing dark web pages and saw what looked like a body part connected to a missing woman. The dispatcher went quiet for a moment, then asked me to stay where I was. 2 officers came to my apartment around 3 a.m. They weren't dramatic about it. They didn't kick the door in or treat me like some hacker. They took my statement, asked what I clicked, asked if I bought anything, asked if I had screenshots. I told them no. I told them I panicked. One officer asked me to open the laptop. I didn't want to. My girlfriend stood behind me in the kitchen while I lifted the screen. The page was still there, except the listing was gone. The seller profile loaded, but that item had disappeared. A few other listings were gone too. The officer wrote something down. The other one asked me if I had refreshed the page before closing it. I said no. He didn't answer, but I could tell he didn't like that. They took the laptop, and for almost 2 weeks I heard nothing. I barely slept. Every time a car slowed outside my apartment, I looked through the blinds. I kept thinking about the seller being online right before I closed the laptop. I knew that probably meant nothing, but fear doesn't care about logic. Then Erin's body was found. It was on the local news. They found her in a wooded area outside the county, wrapped in a tarp, partially buried. The report said police were investigating whether there had been post-mortem mutilation. They didn't release details. A detective called me the next day. He didn't tell me much, but he confirmed that what I saw was being treated as evidence. He said I did the right thing by reporting it. He also told me not to discuss the details publicly. I asked him if the seller was caught. He paused too long. Then he said, "We're still working on identifying everyone involved." Everyone, not someone, everyone. I got my laptop back months later, wiped clean. By then, I had already quit that job. I couldn't sit in that office with my coworker anymore, listening to him make jokes about dark web stuff like it was all some scary internet myth. I never told him what happened. I didn't want to know what he would say. The worst part is that I still see Erin's missing poster in my head sometimes. Not the crime scene, not the listing, the normal photo. Her smiling at the beach with that little sun tattoo on her arm. That is what made it real. Not the body parts. The fact that somebody had taken a person with a dog, siblings, coworkers, favorite restaurants, bad days, inside jokes, and a whole life, and turned one piece of her into a product listing. No dramatic warning popped up. No creepy music played. No monster stepped out of the dark. It was just sitting there for sale. 3 photos, a price, and a review section.